Hi and welcome back to the channel. And it's actually been a few weeks longer than I would have hoped actually since I did my last video. And there are a number of reasons for that. I've actually got a guest with me at the moment, a member of my family, a young member of my family, who's flown over from another country, and I've been playing host. And that's meant that I've actually spent more evenings than normal, I would say, basically giving that person attention. And so yeah, anyway, that's kept me pretty busy. Another thing that's been going on is that I've been repairing a 1541 disk drive. This disk drive here actually, and that's actually the subject of this video, obviously if you've read the title. Now the reason why I needed to repair this was, it's a little bit of a long-winded story, and I need another prop actually to tell you that, so let me just grab that. So on New Year's Eve of 2024, I was set up to play this game, Wasteland. It is the spiritual ancestor of Fallout. I mean, literally the spiritual ancestor, because it was actually the first game in that series. Because of some shenanigans with Electronic Arts, the publisher of the game, they didn't actually allow the original developers to make a sequel to it. Which then inspired them to create a new sequel, which they called Fallout. So, and basically this is a game set in a nuclear wasteland. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? So yeah, there I was, New Year's Eve, ready to play my game on my Commodore 128D. Turned on the machine, and it was working for a very short period of time, and then it broke. So that left me pretty crestfallen. That machine has a built-in disk drive. I also have a 1541-2 disk drive to go along with that machine. So I thought to myself, well, that's okay, because what I can do is I can use my Commodore 64, which is on the other side of the room right now, with that drive to play the game. Fantastic. So I got this drive here, connected it to my Commodore 64, and discovered that although the drive would actually read disks, it wouldn't actually format anything. And one of the first things you need to do to play Wasteland is format well, not 4 disks, but 4 sides of a disk, and then write the contents from the game onto those disks. And I couldn't do that because I couldn't format the disks because the drive has a fault. So I thought, that's not a problem because I've got my Commodore 1541 drive, which is actually quite new. I bought it at ZZap Live last year. I'll use that instead. Not actually used it up until that point. But this was a great opportunity to obviously make use of that drive. I plug it into the Commodore 64, I turn it on, and the drive just spins constantly. So if you know anything about 1541 drives, you'll know that that's a sign that the drive is partially dead or dead. So I realized at that point I would have to repair it. And here we are, repairing that drive, or at least hopefully repairing that drive. Now, this video actually came out a lot longer than I expected it to. Had some ideas along the way. I was testing out new processes as well for making videos because we have the cabin, and the whole point of having this cabin is to make the channel better and to make my videos in a way that I couldn't do so before. So I have a retro tink. I thought it would be really cool if I can do some captures of the screen while I'm working over there in the repair area. And I also have my oscilloscope, and I was going to use that together. And I thought at some point, wouldn't it be good if I made a diagram of the 1541, because the one which is in the manual, which you can download online, is a little bit ratty, I'll be honest. So I made a diagram based on that manual, and then I thought it would be quite cool if I then went through one of the circuits on that drive. Anyway, it's ended up being about 1 hour 20 long, and I was thinking that's a bit of an issue because obviously not everybody likes long videos. But then I thought to myself, well, actually, maybe what I can do is if I release that version of the video to my channel members, and then I'll release a cut down version for everybody else. Now, unfortunately, right now, I only actually have one channel member, but if I don't release exclusive content for my channel members, there's no real reason to be a channel member. So unfortunately, right now, I do have to release that special version of the video to one person. Obviously, it would be fantastic if anybody watching the shortened version of that video could actually join the channel. And then obviously they can watch the longer version. And in the future, then that would then encourage me to make more exclusive content for my channel members. So a little bit of an experiment, and also something that's really beholden on me for my one channel member for now. Thank you so much. You know who you are. So yeah, that's the way it's going to be. There's going to be a 1 hour 20, something like that roughly, version of this video. And then there's going to be a shorter version, which is for more sort of public consumptions for everybody else out there on YouTube land. So anyway, let's not waffle anymore, and let's get into repairing this fantastic drive, which was an era-defining piece of kit for Commodore 64 owners back in the day. And I was certainly one of those. So yeah, let's get this drive working again. So let me give you a quick run through of my test setup for today. I've got an 01 VDS3102. That's a 100 megahertz oscilloscope, and it is a 2-channel scope. I must admit, I am relatively noob to the land of oscilloscopes. I have actually used it already to fix my Amiga 4000. But this today is probably the second attempted repair where I'm actually using it in anger. Then obviously I've got my 1541 drive, which has problems, which I will demo in a second. Then my Commodore 64, which, as we saw in my last video, I repaired the power switch, and I've got it connected today to a monitor I bought quite recently actually, and it was for use with my Atari ST Mega, but it's a good HDMI monitor, and I've actually got it connected up using a RetroTink there, which is also something I haven't actually used yet in my channel. Then I've got my old laptop with Windows on it, and that's the software for the 01. The downside, I think, to the 01 is, because it's cheaper, because it's not, in quotes, a physical oscilloscope, is that you have to have a laptop to use it with. And I found that with the, at least the 3102, you have to have a Windows laptop, which is really quite janky, because I'd rather use Mac OS all the time on this. It's just the native OS. And but luckily, I do actually have dual boot on this machine, which is very lucky. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to use the oscilloscope. Yeah, so please, 01, please actually try and get your software converted to run on Mac OS, because I don't think it's acceptable today that it only really runs on Windows. So that's the setup we have. Let me put down the camera in a position where you can see what I'm doing here, at least reasonably well. And I've done some preliminary checks, and I'm just going to show you those to you now to explain what I'm going to do next. Actually, before I do that, let me just show you the failure state of this drive. So if we just turn it on here, being careful at the back. There we go. It just spins constantly. So it's a little bit more diagnostic than that. If I turn off my Commodore 64, I've got it turned on right now. Let's turn off my Commodore 64. And now I'm going to power cycle the drive. Turn it back on. It's spinning all the time now. What I wanted to show you is that sometimes, maybe it's a capacitor thing. Let's just wait a few seconds for it to maybe drain its capacitors. What I find very often is that if I turn on the drive and I don't have the Commodore 64 turned on, it will spin up. You know, the power light will come on, it will spin up, do its usual check, whatever it is, you know, ROMs loading, whatever, and then stop. But as soon as you turn on the Commodore 64, it'll just spin constantly. So that's obviously quite diagnostic. Now, what we'll do next is well, let me actually just try and show you that. Now, there we go. As I just said, it stopped. So if I'll wait now to see if it actually does anything, it won't do anything generally. But as soon as I turn on the Commodore 64, there you go. So when the Commodore 64 starts, it sends a reset signal to the drive as well. And that is obviously being picked up by the drive, and it's causing it to start spinning, which is not really what you'd expect it to do, I think. And the other thing is, if I type in load, and I try and load up the directory, there we are, I've just typed in load, blah, 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 press return, and you'll see it just keeps on doing that and will never return anything. So it's obviously talking to the drive, because if I turn off, let's just reset everything again, turn off the drive, turn on the Commodore 64, and we'll type in load the directory again. And you see now it's saying searching for device, not present. So when this drive is actually on, it finds it, but it just doesn't get anything back from it. And I'm very lucky actually, because I'm not sure if this is the case with all of these drives, but as you can see, most of the chips are actually in sockets. I think here we've got the ROM. Well, maybe, I'm not sure which one of these two is the ROM or if it's both of them. But anyway, these are actually socketed. Then you've got the 6502, which is the main CPU here. Then you've got the two 6522s. And then you've got this chip here as well. And they're all socketed. So let me show you why I want to do what I want to do next, which is basically just to get them out of their sockets and give them a clean and put them back in, because I've actually seen other videos where people have done that, and it's a very simple thing to do, and it's basic maintenance, and sometimes it can basically fix the problem. And I don't think there's a great deal wrong with this drive. I think it is just something with those logic chips. So yeah, let me pop you down in a nice position where you can see what's going on, and I'll just show you what's the sort of activity on the drive itself. Okay, I've turned off the house lights, and that's just to give you a little bit of a better chance of actually seeing the monitor here on my laptop. Let me just rotate this a bit so it's not getting any light from above. If I turn on the drive, so the light is spinning and now is stopped. And if I put the pin for my oscilloscope here, this is on one of the data pins on the CPU. That's the 6502. You can see you've got activity. And if we go to this pin, activity, activity, and so on. If we go down to the 6522, again, we're seeing activity. That's looking a little bit odd maybe on that pin. And activity, but basically you're not just seeing, you know, like a dead chip doing nothing. There does seem to be activity on different lines. Although I must admit that one looks a bit odd. Oh, there we are, that's okay. And then there, nothing much. That's a bit of an odd one, isn't it? Okay, let's try that one here as well. Yeah. That does look a little bit odd. Seems to be growing as I, put the oscilloscope on it, growing up. So there's a couple of things that we can do. And this is what I can see right now. This is me learning how to do this. I've watched a number of other videos, but each case is relatively unique, right? What I'm seeing here is that the CPU does seem to be doing something. It could be marginal, but it's certainly not doing nothing. It's not a dead CPU. I'm seeing the 6522 doing something, the other one doing something. And there is always the potential that any of these chips has failed, but there is also the potential that the sockets themselves are dirty and there's a partial connection going on there. So I think the first thing I should do really before doing any other investigation is to actually check and see by removing the chips and then resocketing them. But before we do that, let's have a quick word from our sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay, where you can make your tech dreams a reality. And now in PCBWay's new Project Share, you can upload your projects and share them with the community. And if you do use any of these projects, a percentage of the money that you pay will actually go to the author. So you can share your projects and you can also benefit the projects that others have shared on PCBWay. So if you do have any projects, why not upload them to PCBWay and get them out to the community? And of course, why don't you browse the project share and see if there's something there that's interesting for you? Because whether it's PCB prototyping, PCB assembly, 3D printing, or even CNC machining, PCBWay is the way. Starting with an instant quote for your PCB projects, PCBWay will leap into action, building your PCB, assembling it for you if you wish, and once it's passed their quality tests, it'll be winging its way to you in a flash. PCBWay, PCB prototyping the easy way. I've got some contact cleaner here. It's cheaper stuff, which has been recommended. I bought this because I find deoxit is actually pretty expensive, runs out very quickly. This was super cheap and apparently is actually really good as well. So maybe a less well-known brand name, but apparently it does the same job. So I'm just going to use that. So yeah, let's get the chips out. I'm going to make sure that I turn off the drive. Obviously, before we do that, I'm going to use this, in quotes, deoxit, this 10 Super contact cleaner to clean the sockets. And we'll see if that has any effect on the behavior of the drive. The other thing that we can do is we can try reversing these chips. One of them could be marginal, and if we reverse it, we may get different behavior. They should be exactly the same, these two chips. They're both 6522s. So if we see any difference in behavior between these two chips, it indicates that the one of them is actually not working correctly. I'll have to work out which socket does which. And it could be that one of these is to do with the reset circuit on the C64. And that would then indicate that whichever chip goes into the reset circuit socket, if that has a fault, then that's probably why when you turn on the machine, this starts spinning constantly. So anyway, let's get the chips out of their sockets, give the sockets a quick clean, and then get them back in and see if that makes any difference. Obviously, I'm going to speed this up because you don't really need to see this in real time, right? It's quite awkward on this machine actually to get these chips out. I did have a chip puller. I'm not really sure where it is. I'm going to use this for now. So it's difficult because you have these capacitors which are right in front of it. Well, I've got to admit, that looks really good. Let me just show you to the camera. See that? Looks pretty clean, so I don't really think oxidation is a problem here, but you never know. It's worth a quick bit of maintenance. There we go. One of the 6522s, now the other one. There we are. There we go. Now for these two, I think ROMs here, right? These are going to be horrible to get out, I can see that. There we are. Now this one, the most awkward of the lot because you can't get to this side. All good. Okay, let me put these where you can see them. So these all have to go back in the same order as we see here, apart from these two, the 6522s. They can be swapped around. Everything else has to go back in the same order. So let me put them here. And I've made sure I've kept all of the orientations the same. So anyway, let's just give this a little bit of a clean in this area. I will be cleaning this with an air gun, but for now, let's just give it a quick dusting with a Q-tip. Just to get rid of the dust in the area, that's all. Yeah, this will benefit from being dusted. Actually, it's pretty dusty, especially here. Just try and get some thinner ones here, which have pointy tips on them. Here we go, let's use one of these. Yep. Pretty decent amount of fluff coming off. Okay, let's put some of this in. Okay, while that's still wet, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put these back in to let them benefit from contact cleaner as well. Just make sure I get these nicely lined up. Just check this is okay. Yeah. Straight in. There we are. Now for the first of the 6522s, I'm going to put it back in its original socket. Yeah, that's good. 6502, put this back in its socket. This is the CPU. Yeah, and the other 6522. Okay, let's get the cotton bud back in there. Mop up some of that contact cleaner because it's gone on the dust. There we are. Let's just take the excess contact cleaner off the chips. Right, that's it. Let's just test, well, let's just check first that I haven't put things in the wrong place. 6502 goes in here. The first ROM goes here. Second ROM, 6522, 6522, and this other chip here. Okay, let's turn it back on, see what happens. Same as before, same behavior. So basically what happened was the power light came on, then the drive light came on, the red light came on temporarily for about 2 seconds, then turned off again. So what I'm expecting to happen now, if it's working, which I'm not really expecting to, is that when I turn on the C64, the drive light may come on again, but I would expect it to go back off again after a second or two. So let's just try that. Drive light's on constantly. So that's made absolutely no difference to things. And, well, yeah, let's just show you that as well. So if we just type in and load the directory, it's saying searching, and it'll just keep on searching forever. So that shows that that isn't basically a fix. So let's just turn that off. We'll turn it off here as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try swapping over the 6522s and see if that gives us any difference in behavior. Because if it does, that is diagnostic. Okay, they're swapped over. So now I'm going to test again. And we're going to be looking if there's any change in the behavior. Do we have the drive not turn on constantly when the Commodore 64 is turned on? So first of all, we'll just turn on the drive. Power light is on. The drive was active for a second or two, just the same as before. Now let's see what happens when we turn on the C64. It's the same behavior. It's just spinning constantly. So that's interesting. Let's just turn it off for a second and talk about that. That suggests to me that potentially the CPU is okay, because I think it is actually executing some kind of code. We saw activity on it. Unfortunately, I don't have a spare 6502, which I could plug in there to try out. Well, actually I do, when I think about it, I think. I do have a 15412 drive, but I'm not sure if the chips in that are socketed. And if I know Commodore, by that point they were trying to save money, I would imagine. So the chances are they're actually soldered to the board. But I will investigate that, because that could be interesting if, you know, we could eliminate the fact that it's the 6502. But my feeling is right now that it is executing some kind of code, because we've seen activity. It's not just sitting there producing weird behavior. We've seen activity on the 6522s, and we've seen that if we swap them around, we get exactly the same behavior. So that suggests that they're both okay. So now my suspicion is on the ROM and also this chip here. I'm going to do a little bit of research into what this chip does, and it could be that that's actually causing the problem, or potentially the ROMs. So I think the first thing I need to do is go and have a look at my 15412 drive and see if I can actually get the 6502 out of that and put it in here and test it. That's worth trying. Apart from that, then I need to do some research into what this chip is and see if it's involved, for instance, in the reset circuit. And then in the long run as well, I would potentially like this drive to use something like Jiffy DOS. And Jiffy DOS, as far as I'm aware, has its own ROM. So it could be that I can actually kill two birds with one stone by replacing the standard ROM with that one. Maybe that's the faulty ROM, if that's the issue. And that would fix that problem by replacing that particular ROM. So anyway, yeah, we'll need to do a little bit more investigation. But right now, we don't have a fix. Okay, so I'm going to turn on the machine. Actually, I'm going to turn on the drive first. There you go. You saw the power light come on. Then you saw the drive spin for a second. Let me just take this out of the way. And then it stopped. That's the same as before. Now, when I turn on the Commodore 64, you're going to see that a reset signal is sent to the drive, and the drive should reset and basically do what it just did. Now, obviously, previously we saw that instead of doing that, it was just spinning constantly. And that meant the drive was basically locked up and you couldn't do anything. So that was a bit of a dead end. So now you can see it actually spins and then stops, which is normal behavior. So I've turned on the machine and it's gone into Easy Flash. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get back to the DOS prompt, and I'm going to actually click on 6 here to load up Jiffy DOS. There we go. And one of the commands that Jiffy DOS has is @ and if I enter that and press enter, it will actually tell me that the drive is running Commodore DOS version 2.6, it's a 1541, etc., etc. Now that is a leap forward because what that means is the drive is actually responding through the serial port here. The CPU is definitely doing something. The ROMs are definitely doing something. I'm not sure about the rest of the behavior of the machine, but we definitely have a working CPU. Otherwise, you wouldn't get that response. The CPU has to obviously speak to the ROMs and then send up that data back through the serial. So that's extremely diagnostic. That tells us that the drive is working on a fundamental level. Doesn't mean it's fully functional, but it's, you know, there is life in there, as it were. Also indicates that the PAL's possibly working properly, the vias, etc., etc., etc. Now, where it isn't so peachy is if we actually try and load something off disk. So I've got a disk in there. It's one of these nice Kodak disks that I bought a couple of years ago, brand new. Yeah, floppy disks these days are a little bit hard to come by and very expensive. I've actually looked at these right now, and on Amazon, somebody's selling them for £40 for 10, which is crazy money, and I won't be buying those. So yeah, that's a bit of a problem. I would like to get a few more. It's always nice to have floppy disks. Anyway, DOS wedge again, and this time I'm going to do $, and that will actually load up the directory off the disk. So let's see what happens when we do that. It's trying, the head's moved. It's spinning, and the red light is stuck on. The spinning has stopped, so the drive is not active anymore now. And if you look at the screen, it's actually locked up. It's not returning. So this is where I am with the drive right now. It's obviously not working correctly, but what we should do next is have a look at the diagnostic cartridge, because that will also then give us some more insight into what the problem is. And the diagnostic cartridge actually has a bunch of different tools built in that make it easier to test. So I'm just going to restart the C64. It's going to take us back to the main menu on the Easy Flash cartridge. And you can see here I've loaded Adrian's digital tools. So I'm going to press G to load that up. Of course, because it's a cartridge, it's pretty much instantaneous. F7 to go down. And there's the 1541 diag card. So let's just load that up. Press return. Takes a second or so. And there we are. We're in the diagnostic. If I reset now, from what I recall, it'll go back to this menu, and then we can very quickly get back to the diagnostic cartridge pretty quickly. You know, not instantaneously, but it's pretty quick. So let's do a disk speed check. So S for disk speed, S, there we go. It's asked me to press return. And you could hear the heads moved. And it's spinning. Well, actually it's spinning, but the red light isn't on. And what you can see is it's actually not saying a drive speed. So that indicates to me that there's something wrong with the read system. Not sure if that's correct, but that's what it kind of suggests to me, because I don't think it has to write to the disk to test the speed, but I would imagine it has to read from it. And if it can't read from it, then it can't get a value back for the speed. That indicates to me a problem with reading. We tried to read a directory, that didn't work, it didn't read it, it hung. So that's two kind of counts now where reading seems to be a problem. So let's just reset the cartridge. Let's load up the cartridge again. This time I'm going to check the alignment on the drive. That requires reading as well. So there is a test here, isn't there? Oh yeah, the first item, alignment check. So press A and press space to check. Again, you can hear the heads moving, and the drive is spinning, and there is nothing coming back from the alignment check. So again, to me, that indicates that reading is a problem. So let's test my theory. Let's just reset it. Go back into the diagnostic cartridge. And this time I'm going to do something which is kind of write-based. I can't use the performance test because unfortunately that requires reading, and that just seems to hang. So the performance test right now seems to be completely off the table. But we do have a fast format option. So let's try that, F. Need to give it a name, my disk. There we are, number 12. We just need to give it an ID. Let's let it go. And it's saying press any key, device not present. So that doesn't seem to work. Well, actually, no. The heads are moving. And it went through the process of actually formatting. But on the screen, it's actually showing device not present, press any key. So I'm assuming that it's doing some kind of format and trying to read that format to verify it, but it can't because there's something wrong with reading. Like I said, that's my intuition. I'm not sure if that's actually correct. So where do we go from here? So in the next chapter, I was going to run through the workings of the drive using a diagram, but unfortunately that would have made this version of the video, which I was trying to keep quite short, very long. So I've actually kept that in the channel members video. So if you do want to see that section, please join the channel and you can get that version of the video. But as I said, it does make the video extra long. So that's why it was actually moved to that. So I'm back at the machine. I've got my multimeter here. I'm going to put that in your view if I can. It's a little bit awkward here, but I'm going to put it on ohms. There we are. I believe it's already on ohms by the looks of it. Yep. So we're going to be measuring resistance. And if you know these drives, you know what I'm going to be looking at. It's the heads here. There are a number of connections internally to the drive in the head assembly there. In the Mitsumi drive, they're little windings of magnetic wire. And what can happen is, from what I understand it, is that the coating which is on those wire isn't very good. It lets moisture through and the little wire can corrode and eventually it shorts. And once it's shorted, that's it. It doesn't work anymore. Now this is an Alps drive, as you can see by the mechanism here. It's has this kind of door mechanism. And luckily, whatever the problem was with the Mitsumi drives, these Alps mechanisms don't really suffer from it. But still, we must test it because we would be wasting our time if the heads were dead. You know, this would be effectively a dead drive. I'm not going to take it apart. I'm just going to unplug the heads. There we go. And what we're testing for is resistance between the different wires. So you've got the common here on the right-hand side, and then you've got these heads here. And you want to basically check each one of these, the combinations between them. And what you should see is a low ohm count. So if I've got this set up correctly, which I think I have, let's test. So I'm going to put the black on there and the red on there. What are we seeing? 27 ohms between those two, and that's actually perfectly fine. Now for the other two wires, 16.6 ohms. That's good. And now here, I'm actually resting on the floppy disk here. I shouldn't really do that, but I don't think it's going to really cause any harm. But there you go, you got 33 ohms there. If you were to see this number here show K, kilo ohms, that would indicate that you have a short. But you're not, which is good. Now, if I check between them as well, you should find that you have a low ohm value as well. There you go, 12 ohms, and then here, 17 ohms. So basically what that means is, let me turn this off. The heads on my drive look okay. Another way that you can test this is by using continuity mode on your multimeter, and then, which I think is here as well on mine. And you can then basically test to see if you have continuity between the different wires. And if you do, that indicates that it's okay if you have continuity on all of them. However, it's a little bit more accurate to measure using resistance, so you can actually get a better idea of exactly what the resistance is. But when they're low values like that, you've got good resistance levels and it's okay. So I'm going to put this head cable back on. It's actually keyed because one of the pins is missing here. So I'm just going to match it up with the pin which is missing here on the connector. So the process that we just went through, I actually went through that process after I discovered what I thought might be the reason for the drive failing. And the reason why I went through that whole process, checking the heads and all that kind of stuff, was that I had to send off for a chip, or rather 10 chips, to try and test out my theory that it was actually, you know, a certain chip on the board that was broken. That chip has not been replaced yet, so I'm hoping it's going to give us a fix. On the board, there is actually a set of items that actually make up the serial connection. In other words, the connection from this drive to the Commodore 64. And I thought to myself, well, you know, it could be the read, because everything does seem to be failing when you try to do a read, but also it could be that there's something weird going on with the communication between the drive and the 64 when there's a read operation going on. So let me show you the items that are involved in serial. Obviously, you've got the signal coming in here through this port. Then you've got a couple of support chips here that help out with that. The main part of serial is UC3. this chip here. And there is also another chip here in this area that is involved with serial as well. UC3 gets selected by a chip up here at the top of the board. These chips here were suspect as far as I was concerned. Now on my board, these chips are 7707s. But I did see online that there are chips called 7406s, which are functionally equivalent to these chips. And apparently they are one of the chips that actually fail quite often in this machine. When that happens, it stops the serial communication working correctly. Although, as we've seen, there is obviously some serial communication going on between my 64 and the drive. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to send the command to do the directory. But of course, it could be that the signal is being sent incorrectly, or the data being sent back is coming back mangled or whatever. So it could be one of these chips here. Now, luckily, on this particular drive, there is a 7707 here, and there is a 7707 on this side. And I thought to myself, it's not very likely that both of those have failed at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, out of the two chips, the one that actually looks functional. It's a little bit awkward to do this. You have to use two probes. And the reason for that is these chips, they take in a signal on one pin and they output that signal inverted on another pin. So that's their absolute function. If they don't do that, they're not going to work. So they're inverters, basically. So if I show you these two pins here, you see that one is high, and I'm touching the pin next to it, one of the two pins that should be in a pair, and you can see that the red pin is low and the yellow pin is high. And if I go to the next two pins along, you can see here you've got the same thing again, low and high, and then the next two along, low and high, and then the last pin is actually power. So I'm using the yellow probe there. So it's at 5 volts. The bottom right pin here is ground. So I'm going to use the red probe for that. So you can see it's actually is at ground. And then the two pins next to it are inputs and outputs again. And you can see again, low and high. So if you check the pairs on this particular chip, they are all alternating low and high, except for obviously ground and the power. Ground is obviously low and power is high. So this chip seems to be functional. I didn't really get into doing any sort of functional testing on it to see if signals coming in were doing certain things. I just assumed that it was working okay, because when it's just sitting there idle, it does seem to be taking in a low signal and outputting a high signal. So let's have a look at the chip on the left-hand side of the PAL. As I said, that's used in this circuit, and it has exactly the same functionality. Signals come in low, they go out high, or they come in high, they go out low, whatever. It just inverts the signal. So this is the first two pins on the top right. And yeah, that's not right. One of them is low and the other one is low. And if I look at the two pins next to those, it's looking a bit better, but it's a little bit weird because I'm using 2 volts per division here, and one is low and the other one is at 4 volts, and it should be at 5 volts. So that's a bit odd. And then if we go to the last two in the pair, same thing again, low and 4 volts. Down the bottom, let me try and do these. There we are. That was a bit weird, as you can see. But it is actually at 5 volts, that one, that pair. And this one here and this one. 5 volts, they're okay. Okay, again, we have a pair where both signals are low at the same time. That shouldn't be happening. So we have at least 2 signals on here which are, well, they're not working. As I said, every single one of them should be a flip pair, high or low, whatever. If it comes in high, it goes out low, and it's not on that particular chip. So the only way I can really test this is to get a chip, a replacement chip. I can't really unsolder this one and put it in here because the drive's obviously not going to work. The problem with that is I also obviously had to order those chips, and that takes a while. So in the meantime, I then did some more exploration of this drive, and that's what I showed you just now, measuring the heads, I did actually measure the heads before I sent off for the chips because, yeah, I mean, if the heads are dead, the drive is dead. But actually tracing through this whole circuit here and testing out the amplification circuit was something that I did in between just to get more familiar with the drive. And I thought that I would share that with you. So what I'm going to do now is I've actually received those chips, and there is a technique where you actually piggyback one chip on top of another, and sometimes that can actually work. It can get a chip working again. Well, it doesn't get the chip which is piggyback working, but the chip which piggybacks on top takes over and actually provides the functionality that should actually happen. The problem is there are two bodges on here. I don't think they're from the factory, or mods, I should say. They're not necessarily bodges. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to desolder those. And then what we're going to try doing is piggybacking one of the new chips on top. I've actually got 7406s. They are apparently functionally equivalent. So, you know, it should, they basically can replace these 7707s. So let's do that now. Let's make sure the drive is turned off. And I'll get my soldering iron and desolder those wires, and we'll try piggybacking one of the new chips on top. I've got my soldering iron over here. Just going to bring that over. This should be pretty quick. I just need to remove those wires. So I'm going to turn on my soldering station. Got my magnifying glasses on so I can see more clearly what I'm doing. So there is a resistor on one of the pins. It's a bit weird, but apparently it is a mod that some people do. So there we are. I've removed that. I'm going to remove the other wire. There's a wire that goes to another location. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and clean up the pin because it's got some solder on it. Seems to be pretty good. Pop that back in there. Hopefully that's done the job in terms of allowing me to put the other chip on top, piggybacking. I'll turn off the soldering station and let me get one of those chips and we can see if we get a fix. Okay, so these are the chips, the 7406s, I think they are. Let me just open this up and get one out. I actually ordered 10 of them. I was thinking, well, you know, they're relatively cheap actually, these ones. And I thought if they're so common to break down in this drive, then maybe it's a good idea to have a couple extra for the future, just in case when it breaks down. So let me get one of those out. They're actually in pretty good condition. They look pretty much brand new. Let me show that to the camera. So fingers crossed, they're not fake and they work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and put this on top of the other chip and I'm going to try and push it down. Okay, that looks okay. Let me just check on the other side. And I'm making sure, obviously, that the number one pin is at this end. It's orientated correctly, basically. So that looks all right. Let's turn on the drive. And let's give it a go. At $. It's reading. Well, it didn't hang, but it also didn't list anything. Well, that's progress. Wow. Okay, great. I mean, well, actually, no, it's flashing here, isn't it? So there's some kind of error. So I wonder if we need to format this disk. Maybe this disk isn't formatted. So yeah, let's give that a go. And I'm going to do $NUI. That's the name of my disk. Actually, hang on. NUI 34. And let's see if it can actually format it. Heads have gone back to track 0 and it looks like it's moving. So fingers crossed. Okay, the format completed. Now remember, I've actually got it to format disks before. I was just never able to validate them. So fingers crossed. Let's try at $, return. There you go. It's a fix. Well, I say it's a fix. Absolutely chuffed about that. It's a fix, except of course the chip is just piggybacked on top of that other chip there, which is a bit precarious. Obviously, I can't leave it like that. Well, actually, before we get too cock-a-hoop, let's see if it can actually write to the drive, because I've never actually tested that. That's a good point. Yeah, let's see if that works. So let's create a little basic program. I really can't type on this very well. And then we'll run that. Yeah, it works fine. Run stop it. And then we list it. There we are. So I'm going to try and write, not sure what the Jiffy DOS command is for this. You probably might know this. So write my proggy, .8. Okay, that didn't seem to work, did it? I think it's save, isn't it? What am I doing? Write. Can I just write over this? Save. Oh, it's doing something. Okay, now if I type in new, it should blank the basic program. Then I'll list it. It should be gone. It is. Actually, let's just get the directory. That's what we want to see, don't we? Is it there? My proggy's there. Hey. Right then, so load, and then we'll just use star, right? There we are, .8. And run. Epic. It works. Great. Okay, so yeah, what we need to do next is we need to put in a socket for that chip because it isn't socketed, so we need to put in a socket for that. I did have to wait also for sockets to come because I don't really do that many repairs. It's something that's quite new to me and I don't have a good stock of sockets of different sizes. So I've ordered quite a few from China. They've turned up in the last few days, which was actually after these arrived. So it's been a little bit frustrating waiting for those to arrive as well. Anyway, I do have those now, so I can actually put in a socket there. And also, one of the things that actually happened off camera earlier was this drive actually stopped working again. When I say stop working, well, basically it wouldn't do this. It wouldn't give you an error status, which was a horrible moment. I thought that something had gone, another chip had died in the drive, but it turns out that in fact, it was one of the ROMs was loose. Now, don't forget, I've already used a deoxidizer and, reseated these chips, but it looks like one of the ROM chips became slightly loose. One of the pins wasn't attached, and that's why that wasn't working correctly. I mean, it was weird. I would press enter, and it would come back with 7, which was not right, obviously. Do it again, and it would come back with 3. And then I'd do it one more time, and it actually come back with the error message. So I was very crestfallen, and I thought maybe the ROM had died. But I did actually push down the socket, and then it came back to life. So yeah, things were back on track, and I only had one problem that I had to fix. So I'm wondering whether I should replace those sockets or just go for a light touch and maybe just go for this socket for now and use the drive and see if it's a problem. I know that was it Apple III suffered from chips that would actually work their way out of their sockets. And there was this crazy maneuver that Apple advised you to do where you would actually pick up your Apple III and drop it. And that would then, jolt the chips back into their sockets, which to me sounds absolutely nuts. Now, don't forget in this drive, the transformer, there's a big transformer under here and it produces a lot of heat. So I'm thinking that what happens is there's a general problem with these drives where because of the heat cycle, when you turn it on and off, it causes chips to walk their way out of their sockets. And that could be a problem there. So maybe not now, but maybe in the future, if it does turn out to be an ongoing problem, I may desolder these sockets and replace them. So anyway, let's get this socket in next. Okay, so let's get this out. We need to get access to this. Oh, let me take the chip out actually. Still sitting on there, piggybacked on. There we go. Let's put this out of the way. Unplug the serial, unplug the power. There we are. Remove the oscilloscope, and we obviously need to unplug all of these connectors. Let's take these off. I actually put some deoxit on these connectors when I had the problem with the ROM, just to make sure it wasn't those that was the problem. So they're actually coming off a lot better now. They were actually very resistant to coming off, but now they're actually pretty good. Okay, let's see. So we've got screw, screw, screw in the corner, one there. Okay. These look a bit ratty, but these ones look okay. I think that's it. Let's have a look. Nope, not quite. Where's the other screw? What am I missing? Oh yeah, I think there's a couple on the side, aren't there? It's a bit of a weird one. So yeah, interestingly, there's 2 screws here. Not quite. There we go. Let's put that out the side for a second. And I'm just going to move the main body of the drive out of the way. There we go. You can actually see the transformer there. Massive old thing, isn't it? I suppose one mod you could do to this drive as well is to remove this and possibly 3D print a replacement for the power connector here. Let me show you here. There we are. We could replace that with a DIN connector, and then we could actually possibly connect up the power supply for a 1541.2. That would then have to be wired, I guess, onto the logic board on here into this area to actually then replace the 5 volt and 12 volt rails. Not sure if anybody's done that. If you have, maybe get in touch and let me know if that was successful. Anyway, let's put this out of the way. There we go. There's the logic board. And I'll turn over the other side. There's a couple of bodge wires on there. And apart from that, it looks really clean. It looks like this drive has never been worked on, as far as I can see. So look, yeah, these wires here. Oh, this is a bit of a pain, isn't it? I'm going to have to photograph this because there's some little bodgy wires on here, which I'm going to have to reinstate once I put the socket in. It is actually the chip that I need to take out. In the end, I may actually reinstate all of the. I mean, I don't know if these are bodge wires or these are part of that mod, but I should probably reinstate those because I'm assuming that the drive was working in the past with those in place. So yeah, it's getting a bit late today, so I'm probably going to come back tomorrow maybe, or possibly the day after when I've got some time, and we're going to desolder the socket here. I'm not sure if I'm going to do this one as well. I don't think there's any need for it. I'll just leave it in for now. We'll just focus on getting this desoldered, which means I'll probably have to remove this wire because it's going to get melted. And I'll obviously have to remove this wire as well and this wire. And then we'll desolder that, get that out and get a new socket in there. This is actually the socket here that I need to remove, these pins here and here. And as you can see, there are a couple of bodge wires here. And what's quite annoying actually is this one as well, which goes right across here. So I'm going to have to remove all 3 of those, and then this one as well. And this one I may actually have to tape out the way because it's probably going to spring back and go in this area and possibly get melted as I try and remove it. So that's the first thing we need to do. I've got the soldering iron on. I'm just going to put a little bit of flux on here. Actually, I'll try and get this out of the way first before I start waving the flux around. Okay, let's try and get these removed. Oh great, the wire is actually nice and stiff, so it does come off quite easily. You can pose it out of the way. There we are. We've got that out of the way. Now I'm going to turn on the desoldering gun, and we'll put a little bit of flux on here while it's heating up. I must admit, this is the first time I've ever taken a socket off, so let's just hope I don't make a big mess out of it. There we go. And of course, if this does prove to be stubborn, I may put some more solder on. I mean, that is actually the dogma, that you should use solder, but there does seem to be a reasonable amount on each one. Okay. It's going all right. Actually, it is sucking the solder out. I mean, they're a little bit... They might be attached still, you know, little tiny little blobs of solder. So at the end, we might have to use the iron, obviously, to persuade them to give up. Okay. So I'm just going to do the top side here, because I think there's actually a lot of solder maybe on the top side, just hiding behind the back of the pins. So let me try this. I've got some solder wick and I'm going to I put quite a lot of flux there already. Just see if there's any solder that sucks up. Fortunately, because of the angle of the camera, you can't really see this very clearly, but I'm just getting the solder wick up against the legs to make sure that there's no remaining solder on the top side, hopefully. There we are. Okay, can we... Maybe I should try prying. Maybe I should try praying instead. Okay. I promised myself a small bottle of whiskey if this goes okay. Yeah, it's definitely loose on this side, but it just doesn't want to come off on this side. You know what? I'm going to take this chip out because I think it might give me a help. It might be easier if I can get this out to pry that one out. There we go. Got the chip out without any damage, which is good. Just going to try and put this capacitor out of the way slightly. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, it's all loose apart from this one, this corner. It's being a bit of a fiend. There we go. Out it came. There it is. The 7707 is out. And now we need to get the socket in. So before we do that, I'll give this area a little bit of a cleanup with some alcohol. Okay. This one hole here, don't know if you see that, still seems to have a little bit of solder in it. So I need to put a little bit of solder in that and then suck it out again. Hopefully that'll get it out. There we go, and it goes. Let's just make sure it's in there nicely. Let's see if we can get it to suck it out. Yeah, that's good. Okay, now we'll put the socket in. This is the socket that I have. It's a precision dip socket. Adrian's Digital Basement seems to think that these are more reliable than the cheaper types. As I'm going to replace this, then I may as well use the best kind of socket that I can, really. So yeah, let's put this in now. So make sure it's oriented correctly. In it goes. Is it going to go in? Yes, it is. So I'm just going to put some flux on here. There we go. Okay, let's do the corners first. Make sure we get it tacked in nicely. There we are. There we go. All the pins done. Right, let's get some alcohol on there and clean it up. Turn off the soldering iron and I'll just give this a quick clean. And I think we're ready to reassemble. Oh, actually, I just realized I need to solder those bodge wires back on, don't I? Yeah, that's nice and strong. That's nice and strong. They're all good. Let me just double check that I've got that right. Yes, I have. Okay, that's great. Right then, I'm going to put this back together and we'll test it and we'll see if it works. Okay, let's get this chap put back together and then we can test it. So just to show you off camera, I've already put the power back in and I've also put in the new chip, the 7406. So hopefully that socket is in correctly. It's a good point, isn't it? Really probably shouldn't screw this down until I've tested it because it'd be horrible if I cinched it all in and it actually didn't work. So let's just put it in gently. I'll put it on as standoffs. There we are. Let's put in the power. And these are all sitting in their original orientation, which will make it a lot easier. That's wrong. That should be over here. And this one is for the heads. Just check where the pin is missing. Yep. There we go. That's on correctly. And it's just this, which is for the LED. And we need the power cable. Okay, let's get that in. Okay, I think everything's good. Okay, let's turn on the C64. That's still working. That's good. That's a good start. Okay, let's go to Jiffy DOS. There we are. Jiffy DOS is running. Let's turn on the 1541. That's good. That went off. That's a good sign. And let's try communicating with it. Yeah, it's responding. Oh, thank God for that. I'll stop procrastinating. Let's go on with actually loading the directory. Fingers crossed, double crossed. It's working. Well, I guess we should do that test again, right? Run. Drive works. I don't know. It's just a simple basic program, but just makes me feel happy that that's working. Okay, well, that's great. The drive is officially fixed. I've got the lid over here, actually. Let me show that to you. It's a little bit scuffed, so I think there's going to be a little bit of cleaning in the future of this drive. Unfortunately, some of these marks are actually burnt into the plastic, and there's nothing much you can do about that, but the grill there is very dirty, so this is definitely going to be cleaned. But let me reassemble this, and then I guess we'll finish off the video in triumph. And does it run? It does. Job's a good one. It's done. It's repaired. Whew. Now I can enjoy my bottle of whiskey. There we go. I know it's tiny, but it reminds me of a story of, let me turn this off here. Stop that. There was an actor in British films, carry-on films. They were sort of like comedies from the 1950s, 60s and 70s. His name was Sid James, and he had this agreement to be sponsored, and every movie that he appeared in for about 5 movies, he would always turn up with at least one bottle of the whatever the sponsored whiskey was that he was paid to publicize. So yeah, in the spirit of Sid James, I'm gonna enjoy this whiskey, and then we're gonna wrap up this video, I guess. And yeah, by the way, we're not sponsored by, what is it, Famous Grouse. It's just a random Christmas chocolate that I'm going to enjoy. Yeah, anyway, we have succeeded. The drive is repaired. Fantastic. So we managed to repair the 1541 drive. I hope you enjoyed that process. It was certainly an interesting process for me. I had to learn a great deal to get this drive fixed. In the end, it turned out that the problem was relatively simple. It could have been a lot more complex than that, obviously. I do actually intend to replace the ROMs in this chip. I would like to get Jiffy DOS into it. As we know, the 1541 without any sort of modification is a really slow disk drive. So I think putting some Jiffy DOS ROMs in this drive in the near future is definitely a thing I'm going to do. I've actually received the adapters that I need to do that, and I believe I have the EPROMs to do that. So keep an eye out for that video in the near future. I'm very much looking forward to obviously playing Wasteland. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do a video on this. Possibly I might do a live stream, or I might do a sort of more conventional review. I'll have to have a think about it. I'm very, very happy that I've actually got to the point now where I've got my Commodore 64 over there, I've got my 5041 drive, and I can actually crack on with actually playing Wasteland. It was very disappointing on New Year's Eve to discover that I just couldn't get this working. My Commodore 128 went down, then the 1541-2, then the 1541 turned out to be faulty. So yeah, it was a bit of a desperate situation really, to find all of those things were broken at the same time. Also, you know, with this video, I'm doing a little bit of an experiment, and there is a much longer version of this video. It would be fantastic if you could join the channel to get access to that version, if that's something that interests you. If you enjoyed this video, I think you'll enjoy the longer version, actually. There's some interesting information in there. And, you know, if you're into learning about fixing the 1541, I think that information will be quite useful to you. Anyway, let's not dwell on this any longer. I need to move on to pastures green to make more videos for you. So yeah, if you are a new member of my audience, then please, it would be fantastic if you could click on the like button, or obviously if you're a long-time member, etc. Please like the video, click on the like button, because it'll really help this video to go out to other people in the community. And if you are new to the channel, then please click on subscribe, because that obviously will get you notification. But for that, you need to click on the bell. Click on the bell, and then you'll be notified when I release new videos in the future. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope you have a good day, and until I see you next time, take care.